Hello friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Riya and in today's video, we will be discussing the top 5 most important writers of Indian English literature that are frequently asked in UGC NET English exam. As you already know that Indian English literature is a significant portion of UGC NET English syllabus. So understanding these writers and their works becomes extremely important, especially when you want to ace UGC NET English exam. In this video, we will be covering the top 5 most important writers of Indian English literature, mostly from the independence and the post-independence period. This video is basically the most requested by you guys, as I've mentioned in the poll that I've shared on YouTube post. So stay tuned till the end of this video and don't forget to hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss any videos that I will be uploading on such important topics in the future. Indian English literature faced a lot of significant changes because India as a nation was going through a lot of socio-cultural as well as political changes, including the British rule, then the independence, and then the partition. Because of which the Indian English literature also had to take major strides to match and adapt to the changing times. As I've mentioned previously in the video that I will be covering some of the most important and frequently asked independence and mostly the post-independence writers who shaped the post-independence Indian writing in English during that point of time. Now, before we begin with that, it's also very important to understand what revolutionized, what modernized the post-independence Indian English literature. One of the very first steps that was taken to provide the respect that Indian English literature deserved in the first place was that from 1960 onwards, the Sahitya Academy Awards started to cover Indian English literature. Before that, it was not covering. It was only from 1960 onwards that it started to cover. Now that helped in providing the recognition and respect that Indian English literature deserved. The next was the formation of the Writers' Workshop in Calcutta by P. Lal and Anita Desai. One of the very purposes, you can say, for creating the Writers' Workshop was to store faith in English as a language and understanding that English, being the Britishers' language, has the capability to play a creative role in Indian literature for producing original writings and transcreation. This comes in the middle of a very hot debate between people who believe that should we be using English, the acquired language, a second language in India, to express our Indianness, to express our Indian identities, values, cultural beliefs, traditions and rituals? Shouldn't we be using our own mother tongues, or shouldn't we be using our Indian languages to express our Indian identities? There are a lot of critics and writers who still believe that. But on the other hand, there are critics and writers like M.E. Derrett who have said that since we cannot expect others to try understand our achievements in our own terms, we have to present it in a language that they can understand. And this is what the 5 writers that we are going to discuss in this video have done. Their writing itself is a testament to the achievement of Indian English literature. These 5 writers are Nirad Chaudhuri, G.V. Desani, A.K. Ramanujan, Anita Desai, and Girish Karnad. Nirad Chaudhuri is one of the most important and famous Bengali authors and scholars with very controversial viewpoints regarding the British colonial rule in India. He was born in East Bengal, which is now Bangladesh, during the British India. He was always against the withdrawal of Britishers from the Indian subcontinent and was against the decline of Western culture in India, Why? Because he was an erudite scholar and he grew up by being completely immersed in Western arts and culture. Nirad Chaudhuri was not very hesitant to outline these ideas in his most popular yet controversial work, the Autobiography of an Unknown Indian, that was published in 1951. He dedicated this particular autobiography to the British Empire, whom he said that all that was good and living within us was made, shaped and quickened by the same British rule. Just imagine the kind of chaos and controversy this work must have created when it was published in 1951, the newly independent nation. Nirad Chaudhuri lost his job as a political commentator and a broadcaster at All India Radio, and this book was severely censured. When we are talking about the autobiography of an unknown Indian, it is more of a national rather than a personal history. It is set in the small East Bengal town and it is centered on a young middle-class Bengali boy and his journey to manhood set within that Indian domestic background and environment. Now, in this particular autobiography, Chaudhuri has dealt with three most important locations with more affection and with more affinity. The first one is Kishoriganj, basically the country town where he spent most of his life up until the age of 12. Second is Bangram, his ancestral village. And finally, the third one is Kalikaj, his mother's village. Apart from the autobiography of an unknown Indian, Nirad Chaudhuri is also quite famous for his other works like The Intellectual in India or A Passage to England, or even for that matter, Thy Hand Great Anarch, which was published in 1987. This particular work is extremely important from UGC NET point of view because it is an autobiographical sequel to The Autobiography of an Unknown Indian. The title itself is borrowed from the concluding couplet of Alexander Pope's Dunciad, which basically reads, Thy hand great anarch, lets the curtain fall, and the universal darkness buries all. In this particular work, he has largely focused upon his working life in India. At the same time, he has provided his insights into India's independence leadership, providing the portraits of Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru. The second most important Indian writer that we are going to discuss in this video is G.V. Desani, or Govind Das Vishnu Das Desani. Now, he was born in Kenya to an Indian family and he is the most famous journalist, educator and writer. He described himself to be a very rebellious figure, as in he ran away from home 3 times and even he was expelled from school. Now, being a rebellious figure himself, he published a revolutionary novel but from a literary perspective. The title of this novel is All About H. Hatterr, that was published in Great Britain in 1948. Now, what is so revolutionary about this novel? It is quite revolutionary because, first of all, in 1948, to publish a mock heroic, almost absurdist novel that throws a comic perspective on the plight of a middle class man and in a multicultural and a cosmopolitan world. It is quite modernistic if you think about it. And to write such a novel in that particular point of time is quite a feat and an accomplishment. Now, in the title, All About H. Hatterr, the H. Hatterr is basically Hindustani Wala Hatterr. That is the pseudonym of a 55-year-old orphaned son of a European seaman and a non-Christian woman in Malaya. Now, this person, that is the protagonist that we are talking about over here, is filled with that nagging sense of insecurity and that fear. And this insecurity and fear is to such an extent that he carries the phone numbers of 50 doctors in case of any urgency or accident. It is quite interesting to read such kind of novels, especially people have called it, critics have called this novel as a human horseplay, because characters not just from the Western world but as well as from East and India, they have come to life, they have come together, and the kind of furore that takes place in this novel is quite interesting to read. Apart from G.V. Desani's All About H. Hatterr, he is also known for a very famous play, that is Hali, that was published in 1950. It was a lyrical tragedy for whom both E.M. Forster and T.S. Eliot have written forewords. Another writer who has significantly shaped Indian English literature is A.K. Ramanujan, or Attipat Krishnaswamy Ramanujan. He was a poet, a scholar, a writer, an educator, a linguist, and a translator. Not to mention, he was also a famous folklorist. Now, his literature is spread across 5 languages, including Tamil, Telugu, Sanskrit, English, and Kannada. He taught Dravidian linguistics at the University of Chicago. As a translator, Ramanujan is largely popular for his translation of U.R. Ananthamurthy's Samskara, which was published in 1965. He has subtitled this particular novel as A Rite of Dead Man because the word Samskara basically translates to a rite of passage. Now, what is this rite of passage that we are talking about in this particular novel? This novel is basically centered on a Brahmin who breaks the rules and the regulations of caste and caste-based purity. Therefore, this novel explores the themes of caste-based discrimination. At the same time, the clashes that happen between the newly modernized values of the changing world with the traditional cultural viewpoint of the Orthodox society. As a poet, Ramanujan is also really famous for his first verse collection titled as The Striders, that was published in 1966. Apart from that, his another verse collection that is extremely popular is Speaking of Shiva. It is a really good collection of the translations from Kannada medieval devotional poetry. Apart from these important male novelists, there are also other important female novelists who have made a mark on Indian English literature. One of the youngest female novelists who has significantly shaped Indian English literature, especially in the post-independence period, is Anita Desai. Now, if you look at her novels, you will realize that she has not focused much upon the socio-cultural realities or the external realities. Rather, it is the interior landscape of the characters' minds that take precedence over the external realities. Almost like Virginia Woolf or James Joyce, who focus upon the interior mindsets or the interior monologues and the thought processes of the characters. Her first novel was Cry the Peacock, that was published in 1963. In this particular novel, you can see how she has emphasized upon the interior landscape of Maya, the protagonist's mind. Now, she is obsessed with death because there was an astrological prediction that is by the end of the 4th year of her marriage, there will be a death. Either it will be the death of her or it will be the death of her husband. Now, she did not have any children, which sort of exaggerated her isolation, her loneliness, and even her madness. And because of which, by the end of the 4th year, she herself kills her own husband by coming out of that insane fury, that insane rage, and that madness. Another popular novel published by Anita Desai, which is also extremely important from UGC NET point of view, is Fire on the Mountains, that was published in 1977. In this particular novel, she first of all focuses upon this old unsentimental widow called Nanda, who is physically living as a recluse. That is, she is living in isolation, she is living away from the entire society. Then she meets her great granddaughter Raka, who is emotionally a recluse, which means she is a very shy, introverted person who voluntarily withdraws herself from the social groups, communities, and is living as an emotional recluse. Now, when these two people meet, there is a relationship that develops. Now, initially, this relationship is of mutual indifference where nobody is ready to pull down their barriers. But because of certain situations and circumstances that come on their way, they pull down their barriers and a very emotional relationship develops between these two, where we also understand the plight of women. Another important novel by Anita Desai is Clear Light of the Day that was published in 1980. She considers this particular novel to be the most autobiographical because it talks about her coming of age, and at the same time another novel that is important is In Custody that was published in 1984. It is for this novel, that is In Custody, that she received her first Booker Prize award. The last and the most important writer in Indian English literature is Girish Karnad. Now, he is less popular as a writer and more phenomenal as an Indian English playwright. He wrote most of his plays in Kannada. The first play he wrote was Yayati, that he was writing while he was still studying at Oxford. And it is basically centered on the story of a historical king while incorporating the historical themes and mythological themes. These continue even in his later works and plays. His most important historical play is Tughlaq, which was published in 1964. It's centered on the historical king, that is Sultan Muhammad bin Tughlaq. But apart from these plays, his most important play is Hayavadana that was published in 1975. Now, it has been borrowed from a variety of sources, the first one being the ancient Kathasaritra Sagar, but its immediate source was Thomas Mann's The Transposed Heads. At the same time, it incorporates folk motifs, folk themes from the folk theatre Yakshagan theatre. Now, it has a very complex double-layered plot narrative. The first narrative is of an incomplete man who has the body of a man but a head of a speaking horse. And he feels extremely incomplete. And this theme of incomplete identity is amplified in the second plot narrative, which is the main story. It is a story of two friends whose heads are exchanged by the women that they both love. And these lead to the main question as to what is more important. Is it the head, the mind, or the body? It leads to the classic question of mind versus body dualism that was initially propounded by the philosopher René Descartes. Apart from these, another important play written by Girish Karnad is Nagamandala that was published in 1988. Again, over here, he incorporates the folk themes of the Kannada theatre. And the major folk motif that he incorporates in this particular play is of the snake, where the snake sort of transforms himself into the husband of a wife and dupes her. It basically focuses upon the theme of unhappy contemporary marriage. Apart from writing these plays, did you know that Girish Karnad was also a popular director? He made his entry into the filmmaking business by adapting the book that we just discussed in this video. Can you make a guess? It was basically U.R. Ananthamurthy's Samskara. He made an adaptation, he wrote the screenplay, and he also played a lead role in this particular movie. These were the 5 most important writers, novelists, poets, and playwrights in Indian English literature that are often asked in UGC NET English exam. So make sure that you go through their works in detail before you appear for your UGC NET English exam. Apart from these writers, there are other important Indian writers in English like Khushwant Singh. You also have Nayanthara Sehgal, Ruth Prawar Jabwala, who are frequently asked in UGC NET English exam. Now, if you want to go through their works in detail and get detailed notes for them, you can attend my live classes on UGC NET English exam preparation. In these live classes, I'm not only providing certain essential tips and strategies that help me crack UGC NET English exam in just first attempt, but I'm also covering every author, writer, poet related to the history of British English literature and Indian English literature in a very simplified and detailed manner. Not only that, but I'm also breaking down every complex concept, topic, and work related to literary criticism that will provide you the confidence that you require to ace this exam. Since these are live one-on-one classes, I'm also providing personalized guidance and sharing feedback tailored to your needs and requirements, trying to fill the gaps in your UGC NET English exam preparation. If you want to know more about the courses I offer, the sessions I take, and the notes I provide, feel free to check out my TopMate page. It's topmate.io/Riya Gandhi. I've shared the link in the description box below, so don't forget to check it out. That's it for today's video, folks. If you found this video on the most important and frequently asked writers of Indian English literature in UGC NET English exam informative and helpful, please like it and share it with other UGC NET aspirants. Also, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss any videos that I will be uploading on such important authors and topics in the future. Thank you so much for watching till the end, and I'll see you in the next one.